Corus CAD was originally launched in June of 2009. And at that time, we had finished the PREDICT study, and that was the endpoints that we were able to successfully launch on. However, we had not yet done COMPASS. We had not yet started the COMPASS trial. We had no clinical utility data, and the economic story had not yet been proven out. So we really launched in a pilot way in the U.S. market to try and begin to understand, in the real world, so to speak, where the product was going to be used, where we were going to get traction. I would say by 2009, 2010 timeframe, we really realized we needed to start the COMPASS trial. And so we had done that, and by late 2011, those results were in and were presented on stage at a national meeting at the American Heart Association. And we began to be able to use those results to really market for physician adoption and to health plan adoption. The Medicare decision, which came in second half of 2012, was really began to be triggered as a submission in the first quarter of 2012 by clinical utility results that were coming out of our first prospective clinical utility study called the IMPACT trial. It was done at Vanderbilt University at Vanderbilt Heart, and we were able to successfully get Medicare's approval and positive decision on the basis of those results being presented and on the basis of a second retrospective study that we had done in a primary care population, also showing a similar result, that we were favorably affecting referral patterns in that population. We had started a third study called IMPACT PCP, which would then become quite important, and that was published earlier this year, alongside a study called Registry 1, which is a generically named registry that we did in collaboration with the analytics arm of Humana. And that was published earlier in 2014 as well. Those two studies became very important to the Aetna decision, we feel. And we think that between the prospective studies, both in cardiology and primary care, and the registry study that was done in conjunction with the health plan, we felt like that was a nice set of clinical utility evidence that addressed a lot of different questions, depending on the setting, or depending on the patient population, or depending on the protocol. And so we felt like we had really checked that box. The economic studies, really we began on paper in a number of years ago, trying to understand exactly, that comes with your pricing strategy too, right? That's the first time that you look at your economics, really, is when you think about your pricing strategy. And we began over time, as the data from COMPASS came in, to formulate our economic story really around the performance metrics that we saw in COMPASS, and we're able to really build our economic story in comparison to what's currently done, because the economics are comparative. You're not just building an economic story that has nothing to do with the current standard of care. You're actually building it in a comparative way, in most cases, to what's being done today, so that you can show better cost effectiveness over time and more cost savings in the near term for commercial health plans. So that gives you a sense, a little bit of the timeline between 2009 and now.